Throughout history, there has been some incredible golfers, some of them before you and I were even alive. Legends like Ben Hogan, Tiger Woods, and Phil Mickelson. So, how good were they in their prime, actually? Well, before we can get to them, let's answer a very important question. Who is the GOAT in golf? Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus. Two names that dominate any conversation about golf's greatest players, but one of them played at a time when most golf fans were either very young or weren't even born yet. So today we'll answer the question, how good was prime Jack Nicklaus actually? Born in Columbus, Ohio in 1940, he picked up golf at the age of 10. He came from a family that had already seen great success in multiple sports. His father had already played football for the Ohio State Buckeyes, played semi-professional football for what would become the Detroit Lions, was a local tennis champion in his youth, and was even a scratch golfer. Given this, it's unsurprising that Jack showed the athletic ability that he did from a very young age. It didn't take long for young Nicklaus to show that he had something special with a golf club, scoring 51 over 9 holes the first ever time he played. He won 5 straight Ohio State junior titles, with his first coming at the age of 12. A year later, he broke 70 for the first time and became the year's youngest qualifier into the US Junior Amateur, earning himself a +3 handicap at the age of 13. From the ages of 10 to 17, he had won 27 tournaments in the Ohio area, and if it wasn't for a lack of social media, there was no doubt that he would have been known as a national golfing prodigy, much like a young Tiger Woods was many years later. By the time he was in college at Ohio State, a place where they'd eventually open a museum for him 45 years later, he was already making waves in the amateur circuit, winning the US Amateur Championship twice. But it wasn't until 1962 that Nicklaus really announced himself to the global golfing world. A year earlier, a young and ambitious 21-year-old Jack played the US Open and came second, just 2 shots behind the leader, none other than Arnold Palmer. He had gone from his very small local tournaments in Ohio to competing in majors against the world's very best in just 4 short years, and only a year later, he'd get his revenge. 1962, his first major championship, beating none other than Arnold Palmer in an 18-hole playoff. And this was just the beginning of what would become one of the most dominant careers in golf history. People knew he was good, but I don't think anyone expected him to go on to have the career that he had, apart from maybe himself. When we look back now and discuss major championship wins in golf, his name is at the top of the list. The Golden Bear's record of 18 major victories is the biggest nod to his dominance in the sport. To put it into perspective, even the great Tiger Woods with his 15 major wins falls short of Nicklaus. But it's not just the number of wins that's impressive, it's how Nicklaus spread his victories across all 4 major tournaments: 6 Masters, 4 US Opens, 5 PGA Championships, and 3 Open Championships, completing the career Grand Slam 3 times over, an achievement that only Tiger Woods can match. But here's where Nicklaus's achievement becomes even more impressive. He's the only player in history to win each major at least once in 2 different decades. It's not just about being great for a few years. He maintained that level of excellence over an extended period, adapting to changes in the game, innovations in equipment, and consistently outperforming new generations of players. But here's something that might impress you even more. Nicklaus's success rate in majors was unbelievable. His career win percentage in majors was about 17.3%. That means he won a major about 1 in every 5 times that he played, and in his prime years, that percentage climbed even higher, approaching 20%. In tennis, Roger Federer, widely considered one of the greatest players of all time, has a win percentage of about 21% in Grand Slam tournaments. In basketball, Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls won 6 championships in 15 seasons, a 40% success rate. This is usually the fact that is brought up when comparing him to Tiger. Sure, at Tiger's peak, he was touching on the 20% winning mark as well, but as we all know in his later years, that percentage only got worse and worse. Imagine entering 100 tournaments over your career, knowing that you'd win about 17 of them. That stat alone might be the reason he was named Sports Illustrated Best Individual Male Athlete of the Century. And these aren't just any tournaments. These are the biggest, most pressure-packed events in the sport. Nicklaus became the oldest Masters champion in history, a record that still stands today. This win, coming after a 6-year major drought, proved that even in the twilight of his career, the Golden Bear could still get his older body working and beat the best of the best. Starting the final round 4 shots off the lead, Nicklaus shot a back 930, including an eagle and 2 birdies in his final 4 holes. He finished with a round of 65, securing his 6th green jacket and 18th major title. But now let's look at his overall PGA Tour wins. With 73 victories, Nicklaus ranks 3rd of all time. Only Sam Snead and Tiger Woods, with 82 wins each, have more. But here's the thing. Nicklaus achieved this while playing fewer tournaments than many of his competitors. However, an interesting fact is that Nicklaus also had 73 top 10 finishes in majors. That's the same number as his total PGA Tour victories. And if that wasn't enough, 56 of those were top 5 finishes. To put this into further perspective, Tiger Woods has 33 top 5 finishes in majors. That's an incredible achievement in its own right, but it's still 23 shy of Nicklaus. And the 1970s were arguably his greatest years, competing in 40 major tournaments. Guess how many of those he finished in the top 10? 35. That's 87.5% of the majors in that decade. It's one thing to have a great few tournaments, but to maintain that level of excellence over an entire decade, that's something else entirely. From 1969 to 1978, he made the cut in 39 consecutive majors. That's almost a decade of never missing a weekend in the biggest tournaments in golf. This streak also tells us something about Nicklaus's mental toughness. Golf is a sport where even the best players have off days. It's one of the most mentally taxing sports in the world. But for nearly a decade, Nicklaus never had a bad enough tournament to miss a cut in a major. He was always there, always with a clear mind, and always good enough to be in contention. And people often use the argument that the talent in golf now is better than it was before. But this wasn't just any decade in golf. This was the 1970s, an era that saw the likes of Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Lee Trevino. Nicklaus wasn't dominating against weak competition. He was consistently outperforming some of the greatest players that the sport would ever see. Now, we've talked about Nicklaus's major victories and his incredible consistency, but there's another aspect of his game that set him apart: his physicality. In 1963, Nicklaus showcased his raw power in a way that hadn't been seen before. At the PGA Championship that year, he entered the long drive contest, a competition where players aim to hit the ball as far as possible. Nicklaus didn't just win, he obliterated the competition with a monstrous 341-yard drive. Now you might be thinking, 341 yards, that doesn't sound too impressive by today's standards, and you'd be absolutely right. But here's the catch. Nicklaus achieved this with wooden clubs and wound balls, technology that's practically ancient compared to today's equipment. To put it in perspective, the average driving distance on the PGA Tour in 2023 is around 300 yards, with all the advancements in club and ball technology. Nicklaus was outdriving today's averages by over 40 yards with equipment from 6 decades ago. But Nicklaus's influence on golf didn't end with his playing career. Even at 83 years old, he remains a respected and influential figure in the sport. He's designed over 300 golf courses worldwide, shaping the very landscapes where the game is played. His course designs are known for their strategic complexity, often hosting major tournaments and prestigious championships. He has been inducted into the Golf Hall of Fame, given a Medal of Freedom from the President, and even been presented with an award from none other than Muhammad Ali. But beyond course design and awards, he has never neglected his role in the sport of golf, and has taken on a mentorship role for many young players. He's often seen at major tournaments offering advice and encouragement to the next generation of golfers. Now, when it comes to golf's greatest of all time, there are usually a handful of contenders, but as we know, the two that stand out are Jack and Tiger. These titans of the game have set records, redefined excellence, and left an everlasting mark on the sport. But how does Jack stack up in the GOAT conversation? Let's start with the most obvious comparison: major championships. Nicklaus holds the record with 18 major wins, whilst Woods sits at 15. It is a significant gap, and one that Woods has been chasing for years. But it's not just about the number of wins, it's also the consistency, the longevity, and the winning percentage. But there are a few factors to consider. Tiger didn't just focus on majors in the same way that Jack did. He also played a lot more weekends, which can take a toll on the body, as we now know. He also missed out on over 22 majors due to being unable to play due to injuries. So whilst Jack definitely won more majors in fewer appearances, he was also in prime physical shape in comparison to Tiger, who was broken and operated on practically every bone in his body. And there's always the argument that if Tiger Woods had stayed fit for longer, he would have broken Jack's record. Well, he didn't, so we'll never know. But comparing these two greats isn't just about numbers, and there's no way to measure raw talent. The golfing world has changed dramatically since Nicklaus's prime. Today's players benefit from advanced technology in clubs and balls, allowing for greater distances and accuracy. Fitness has also become a crucial part of the game, with players like Woods revolutionizing the athletic approach to golf. And let's not forget about the money. Prize purses have skyrocketed, allowing players to focus solely on golf without financial worries. So how do we compare players from different eras? It's not easy, but let's take a look at some arguments for both. For Nicklaus, the case is clear. He dominated in an era with fierce competition from other all-time greats like Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Lee Trevino. His major record still stands, and his consistency across decades is unmatched. He completed the career Grand Slam 3 times, showcasing his versatility across all types of courses and conditions. Woods, on the other hand, took the game to new heights. He dominated in a way that hadn't been seen since Nicklaus, against fields that were far deeper and more talented than ever before. His peak years from 1999 to 2009 were arguably the most dominant stretch of golf ever played. And let's not forget his incredible comeback from career-threatening injuries to win the 2019 Masters. One thing that connects these two greats is their mutual respect. Tiger Woods once said, "It's kind of amazing how two different people from two different eras who don't have much contact can feel close." But we do. This bond between the two speaks volumes about their shared understanding of what it takes to reach the top of the sport. Nicklaus, for his part, has always focused on the majors. He once said, "The only thing that was in my mind was that I had a major championship to prepare for." This single-minded focus on golf's biggest tournaments is something that he shares with Woods, and it's a big reason why they're both in the GOAT conversation. But there is one man that sits in the shadows. One man who many golf enthusiasts believe might actually be better than both of them. That man is Ben Hogan. From his ball striking to his beautiful swing, and being the first ever golfer to normalise practicing, which led him to win 5 tournaments that he entered out of 6 in a single year, only stopped from becoming even greater by tragedy and bad timing. So what happened? To answer that question, we have to go back to 1912 in Stephenville, Texas. He was the third and youngest child of Chester and Clara Hogan. His father was a blacksmith, but it's safe to say that Ben's parents struggled financially throughout his childhood, doing their best to take care of their 3 children and make ends meet. Ben would start work at an early age to try and help support his struggling parents, but tragically, his father wasn't able to deal with the stresses of life, and when Ben was only 9 years old, he took his own life in their family home. It has never been confirmed by Ben himself, but it was rumoured that he did it in front of Ben, potentially the reason behind his introverted personality in his later years. After his death, his mother took on a job as a seamstress. His eldest brother took on a job as a delivery boy, and at first, Ben sold newspapers after school, before someone suggested he take up a role as a caddy at a local golf club. That was potentially the best thing that anyone ever said to him. It took him to Glen Garden Country Club, a 9-hole course located 3 miles away from his home. One of his fellow caddies would end up being his future rival, and also one of his greatest ever friends, Byron Nelson. The two would tie for the lead at the annual Christmas Caddy Tournament in December of 1927, when both were just 15 years of age. Nelson sank a 30-foot putt to tie on the 9th and final hole, and instead of sudden death, they played another 9 holes. Nelson sank another long putt on the final green to win by a single stroke. The following spring, Nelson was granted the only junior membership offered by the members of Glen Garden, and club rules didn't allow caddies to be over the age of 16, leaving the two being separated, and Ben forced to take his golf to daily fee courses, Casey Lake, Worth Hills, and Zebos. He continued to improve his golf game, beginning to develop the incredible dedication that led people to say that he invented golf practice. Hogan himself said, "You hear stories about me beating my brains out practicing, but I was enjoying myself. Couldn't wait to get up in the morning just so I could hit more balls. When I'm hitting the ball where I want, hard and crisply, it's a joy that very few people experience." He was one of the first players to match particular clubs to yardages, or reference points around the course, such as bunkers or trees, to improve his distance control. This level of discipline and detail would go on to be a staple of his golf game that we will go over more later, and is likely why the self-proclaimed golf scientist Bryson DeChambeau refers to him as his hero. Ben would go on to drop out of high school during the final semester of his senior year, and turned pro 6 months shy of his 18th birthday at the Texas Open in San Antonio. 2 years later, at a country club in Cleburne, he'd meet a girl once again who had went to his high school, Valerie Fox. He'd taken a low-paying job as a club pro in the same city that by chance she had also moved into. In 1935, they married in her parents' home, but it's safe to say the pair would struggle. His early years as a pro were not easy, and he didn't see instant success, reportedly going broke more than once. He didn't even win his first tournament until 10 years after turning pro in March of 1940. Valerie, however, had never doubted him, and knew that one day his dedication to his craft would bring them all the success that they could have ever dreamed of. And it turned out that once he won one tournament, he'd never stop winning. He won 3 consecutive events in North Carolina at the age of 27, and despite finishing 13th on the money list in 1938, he took up a job as an assistant pro at the Century Country Club in New York. He'd work there for a further 3 years, and even be promoted to head pro, but ultimately would take a job as the head pro at Hershey Country Club in Pennsylvania instead. But it was safe to say that Ben Hogan had now entered his golfing prime, and from the years of 1938 to 1959, he won 63 professional tournaments, including the PGA Championship twice, the US Open, the Vardon Trophy 3 times, and was awarded annually for the lowest stroke average in the PGA. In the years 1940, 41, 42, 46, and 48, he was the highest earning player on the PGA by a mile. But here is the heartbreaking reason why these earnings and his career wins weren't 2 or 3 times higher. From the years of 1943 to 1945, he served in the US Army Air Force, where he was stationed locally at Fort Worth and became a utility pilot with the rank of lieutenant. If you imagine how bad your swing feels after not playing for a couple weeks, imagine how bad you'd get if you stopped playing for months, if not years at a time. But thankfully, he'd return home safe and sound after his service. But the same can't be said for the tragedy that struck in 1949. Driving home to Fort Worth after a Monday playoff loss at the 1949 Phoenix Open, both he and Valerie suffered a head-on collision with a Greyhound bus. It was a foggy night, and Ben had reduced his speed, driving carefully in the low visibility conditions. Sadly, the same couldn't be said for the driver of the Greyhound bus, who was attempting to pass another vehicle on a narrow bridge, which left Ben with no room to try and avoid the crash, leaving him and the love of his life with no choice but to brace for impact and pray for their lives. Ben bravely threw himself over Valerie to protect her, but he saved himself in the progress, with the driving column of the car penetrating the driver's seat. The accident left Ben, now aged 36, with a double fracture of his pelvis, a fractured collarbone, a left ankle fracture, a chipped rib, and multiple near-fatal blood clots. The doctors said he'd have lifelong circulation problems and other physical limitations, saying it was unlikely that he'd ever walk again, let alone play golf. He was in the prime of his career, and in the blink of an eye, a man that could have gone on to be the greatest golfer of all time was stopped unfairly in his tracks through no fault of his own. He left the hospital 59 days after the accident. But Ben knew better than the doctors. He had been through hard times since he came out of the womb, and the one thing that kept him going from giving up in life was golf. No one was going to tell him that he couldn't ever play the sport again that he loved. One way or another, he'd get back on the golf course. And miraculously, he did. He regained his strength by walking insanely long distances at a time, and even resumed playing golf as best he could in November of that same year. This was an Army veteran who had seen his father die in front of him and seen hardship for both himself and his family and his wife throughout his entire life. This alone makes his comeback a heartwarming story by itself. He returned to the PGA Tour at the start of the 1950 season at the Los Angeles Open, where he found himself tied with Sam Snead over 18 holes, but unfortunately ended up losing in the playoff. But considering just a year earlier, he was told that he'd never walk again, this was a pretty good first appearance back, to say the least. Following his recovery, Hogan won the US Open a staggering 3 more times, the Masters tournament twice, and the British Open on his first attempt in the competition. 1953 saw him winning 5 of 6 tournaments that he entered, including 3 major championships, a feat known as the Triple Crown of golf. It still stands to this day as one of the greatest single seasons in the history of professional golf. The only reason he wasn't able to complete the Grand Slam in a single season was because the dates of the Open and the PGA Championship overlapped, rather stupidly, but he at least won the Open that he was able to attend. It is the only time that a golfer has won 3 majors in a single season, apart from Tiger Woods when he did the same thing in 2000. In his later years, he began to decline the opportunity to play the PGA Championship more and more often, and there were 2 main reasons for it. The first reason was that it was match play until 1958, and Ben preferred shooting a number, meticulously planning and executing on a game plan to achieve a score for a round on a particular course. The second reason was because it required several days of 36 holes per day competition, and after his car accident, this was one of the few physical feats that he wasn't able to manage. But his wins weren't the only thing that made him stand out as one of the greats. It was also his swing theory. A young Hogan struggled massively with hooking the golf ball, which he later spent thousands of hours to fix, reportedly down to using a strong grip with hands more on the right of the club, making his swings less consistent. But it was the only way that he was able to compete in distance with his larger opponents. Ben Hogan was only 5'8" and 145 pounds, but he was very long off the tee early in his career. Like many other professional golfers of his day, he competed regularly in long drive contests to show off his impressive distance. His swing in later years produced the famed Hogan fade, lower than usual for a great player and from left to right. This was due to the fix that he had found for his dreaded hook, a combination of a weak grip and a draw type swing, all but eliminating the possibility of a hook. Both him and Mo Norman practiced without gloves, leaving Tiger Woods to say that they were the only players ever to have complete control over their golf swings, and complete control of the ball flight and direction of the ball. The two are still considered by many as the greatest ball strikers the world has ever seen. In 1967, the book The Golf Swing watched every shot that a 54-year-old Hogan hit in the Colonial National Invitational. Over the 4 days, 141 hit the green, with 139 of them being rated from well executed to superbly executed. The remaining 2 shots were a fairway miss by 5 yards and a 5-iron that landed 5 yards short of the green. That's a level of consistency that even to this day is unheard of. But what about the secrets that he claimed he had, that made his swing nearly automatic, removing any doubt or thinking time whenever he approached the ball? The first theory was that he had a special wrist movement known as cupping under, but many believed that Hogan hadn't revealed all that he knew. And it wasn't until 1955 that a book written named Afternoons with Mr. Hogan revealed that the second element of his secret was the way in which he used his right knee to initiate the swing, which was critical to the correct setting of the wrist. In many ways, as mentioned earlier, he is very similar to Bryson DeChambeau, spending hours upon hours mastering every scientific factor of his swing and his golf game. Many believe that he was truly the greatest golfer of all time, and if it wasn't for his service and his car accident, that he truly would have been better than any of the talent to come after him, such as Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. Even if you've never stepped on a golf course in your life, you've heard the name Tiger Woods. We all know he's regarded as one of, if not the greatest golfer of all time, but not many people know just how good he was, or the turmoil he faced throughout his career. From scandals to breaking records, to coming back after a near-fatal car crash, this is the full story of Tiger Woods. Eldrick Taunt Tiger Woods, tied for the most PGA Tour wins and is one of the most famous athletes in modern history. But how did we get here? Following an outstanding junior, college and amateur career, being touted as a child prodigy, he went pro at the age of 20. His father, Earl Woods, was a single-digit handicapper and was one of the earliest African-American college baseball players in the US. Originally, Tiger wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps as a baseball player, until a rotator cuff injury cut that dream short. His father was in the military at a Navy golf course in Los Alamos, which allowed Tiger to play there, the course where he started his journey to becoming a golfing great. At age 3, he shot a 48 over 9 holes at that very course. In 1984, at the age of 8, he won his first Junior World Championship, a championship he'd go on to win another 6 times, including 4 in a row from 1988 to 1991. His father Earl wrote that he first lost to Tiger when he was 11, never winning another match after, which is unsurprising given he was breaking 70 on a regulation course at the age of 12. It was around this time that Tiger would meet his career benchmark in the form of Jack Nicklaus, who was performing a clinic for club members that Tiger attended. His father had researched Jack's career in detail and had set his young son the goal of breaking every record that he held. Talk about setting high standards, given that Nicklaus won 117 tournaments in his career and is the only other player in the GOAT conversation today. He'd become the US Junior Amateur Champion at just 15 years old, making him the youngest winner until the record was broken in 2010. He was named Southern California's Amateur Player of the Year 2 years in a row, and even awarded Golf Digest Junior Amateur Player of the Year. At 16, he'd defend his junior championship, making him the first ever 2-time winner of the competition. He also competed in his first PGA event that same year, unfortunately missing the cut, but the golfing world was definitely starting to take notice of the young prodigy. After graduation from Western High School and being voted most likely to succeed, he chose Stanford University as the next step in both his education and golfing career, after being one of the most heavily recruited golf players of all time by colleges in the US. After enrolling under a golf scholarship, he won his first collegiate event in 1994. He'd also defend his US Amateur title in 1995 and was voted Pac-10 Player of the Year, NCAA First Team All-American, and Stanford's Male Freshman of the Year. He'd compete in his first PGA Tour major at 19, the 1995 Masters. Tied for 41st, he was the only amateur to make the cut. At this point, he was golf's hottest property, with sponsorship deals from Nike and Titleist making him one of the sport's top-paid athletes before he'd even won a major. At 20, he became the first golfer to win 3 consecutive US amateur titles and won the NCAA Individual Golf Championship. He left college after 2 years to pursue golf. At that point, I think he was a little bit too famous to be turning up to class. Over the next 2 years, following his major debut in the Masters, he had time to simmer, planning to return to the tournament with a vengeance. And in 1997, return he did, famously winning his first major, winning by a record-breaking 12 strokes, and sharing a now infamous hug with his father Earl. This made him the tournament's youngest ever winner. All the work that they put in over the last 21 years, all the times his father pushed him to be great, and set those incredibly high expectations. The pressure of being a child prodigy had finally come to fruition. He had finally arrived. There were no doubts. He was going to be the biggest star in the world of golf, and he wasn't going to go away anytime soon. He set the record for the fastest ascent to world number 1 in the golf rankings. He'd also go on to love the Masters tournament, winning it a further 4 times, most recently in 2019, which was an unbelievable achievement that we'll touch on more later. But it wasn't all happy days. Woods was actually severely myopic, leaving him with extremely poor eyesight, and leaving him sidelined in 1999 after having laser eye surgery to try and correct it. And that wouldn't be the last time that this issue would occur, with his vision deteriorating in 2007 once again, with his only choice being laser eye surgery for a second time. But of course, that wouldn't stop him from winning. In 2000, he won 6 consecutive tournaments on the PGA Tour, one of which was the US Open, where he broke or tied 9 tournament records in what Sports Illustrated called the greatest performance in golf history. By 24, he won his career Grand Slam, winning every single major tournament all in the same year. For context, golfers may only win 1 or 2 majors in their entire career, with the majority of golfers never winning one at all. Not many people in the new generation understand how big Tiger truly was. Billboards, TV, magazine covers, his own line of Nike products. If you were a kid in the early 2000s, there was no chance that you didn't know who he was. He was truly a larger-than-life figure, potentially bigger than the sport itself. Following a great few years, he'd hit a sudden slump, not winning a single major in 2003 or 2004, and being overtaken for the first time in the world rankings by Vijay Singh, ending his streak of 264 weeks as world number 1. But of course, that wouldn't be the end of the story. Woods rebounded in 2005, winning 6 PGA Tour events and reclaiming top spot in July for world number 1. He'd begin the following year dominantly as well, winning his first 2 PGA tournaments, but failing to add a 5th Masters win to his tally. But it was at this same year that Tiger's first real test in life would occur, with the passing of his father Earl. He was instrumental in raising Tiger to become the athlete that he became, and attended every tournament that he ever played in. This led him to take time off from the sport understandably, only coming back for the US Open, appearing rusty and even distracted, missing the cut entirely. But he'd go on to turn his sadness into fuel, ending the year by winning 6 consecutive PGA Tour events. Only 10 years after turning pro, he already had 54 wins, including 12 majors, breaking tour records for both wins and total majors over 11 seasons. Tiger brought a new approach to golf. His steely seriousness to competition made him the first of a new breed of athletes in the sport to move away from the previous stereotype of the game being more relaxed and not taken seriously. He didn't want to be friends with anyone, and he wanted to focus purely on his golf. But unfortunately for Tiger, dominoes would start to fall, with the first domino being a knee surgery that saw him out for 2 months. He'd return to play the US Open once again, where he struggled initially but ended up winning in a dramatic 18-hole playoff, after which he announced that he needed yet another surgery on the same knee. He essentially won a major with one leg, which he called his greatest ever championship. He'd be out for the rest of the season, and television ratings for golf would decline significantly as a result. He'd return in 2009, but once again he would fail to win a major. But soon after, the second domino would fall. Undoubtedly the most damaging controversy in his life, and one of the biggest scandals in sports history. His reputation changed for good after a cheating scandal came to light in that same year. Married to his wife for 5 years, he was caught having an affair with a New York nightclub manager, but that was just the start. Over the following weeks and months, a seemingly endless amount of women would come out and tell their stories of their sexual encounters with Tiger, with the true number of people that he cheated with still being debated today. This would see his personal and business life fall apart. He ultimately split with his wife in 2010 and lost numerous endorsements and sponsorships, costing him hundreds of millions of dollars. The scandal would mark the start of an 11-year barren run without winning a single major. The previous poster boy had his personal life turned inside out. The golden child who wasn't so pristine after all. But it wouldn't end there. Thanksgiving of 2009, Woods totaled his car, 2 days after his wife found out about his affair, hitting a fire hydrant, a tree, and several hedges near his home in Florida. Luckily, he wasn't too badly injured, and even thanked his wife for helping him exit the car, apparently using a golf club to smash multiple windows and aid his escape. A later rumor would come out saying that he was in fact fleeing from his Florida home after his ex-wife chased him with that same golf club. You can decide which one you want to believe. He announced that he'd be taking an indefinite break from golf, stating that he was wrong and foolish for his behavior. He returned only 4 months later. He then had a further series of poor performances, even withdrawing from the Players' Championship due to injury. His coach since 2003 left him, and he'd finished the season ranked 2 in the world. There were some chinks in the armor starting to show. The once invincible superstar was starting to lose a step. In 2011, his ranking dropped as far as number 58 in the world, winning no notable tournaments. But in 2013, the old Tiger started to come back. Dominating play, he won the Farmers Insurance Open by 4 shots for his 75th PGA Tour win, the WGC Cadillac Championship for the 7th time, and 2 weeks later the Arnold Palmer Invitational yet again, making it a record-tying 8th win in the event. An elbow injury, withdrawing due to a back injury twice, a wrist injury, a hip injury, and a back surgery later, and he'd spend the next 4 years with more of the same sadness. 2017 was riddled with more injury woes, leaving him playing on heavy pain medication, which can't have helped his focus or his ability. And it was those same painkillers that would do him more bad than good. Here's the next domino. In May of 2017, Woods was arrested by Florida police for driving under the influence. He was found with sleeping drugs, marijuana, and painkillers in his system. He was found asleep at the wheel. Luckily, not doing any damage to himself or anyone else, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 50 hours of community service, a $250 fine, and 1 year of probation with regular drug and alcohol tests. He also underwent therapy to help him with his addiction to painkillers. He later reportedly told friends that he was done with golf, after undergoing a 4th back surgery to try and alleviate leg and back pain that he was feeling. After 6 months of recovery, he played the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas, tying for 9th place. His world ranking went from 1,199th to 668th. On March 11th of 2018, he'd finished one shot back and tied for second at the Valspar Championship in Florida, his first top 5 finish on the PGA Tour since 2013. He'd also finished 2 shots behind Brooks Koepka in the Players' Championship that same year, the closest that he'd come to winning a major in a very long time. He returned to the winner's circle with a PGA win in September of 2018. Was he finally making a comeback after years of turmoil, injuries, and scandals? Was there a chance that he could still compete with one leg, a broken back, and up to his eyeballs in painkillers? But remember when I said we'd talk more about his 2019 Masters win? We're talking about it now. Augusta, a place that had become a home for Tiger, with 4 previous wins in his career. People said that he would never win another major tournament. Once leveraging his incredible work ethic and physical attributes, he'd be stripped of those due to injury. Now all he had left was his experience, his determination, and a little bit of magic. He wasn't the greatest golfer in the world anymore. He didn't have the stamina or the strength to hit the ball further than everyone else. And he was also 43 years of age. But miraculously, he was still in contention on the final day. Sunday saw him 2 shots behind Molinari, a position where he'd never won a major from before. After an extremely windy first 9 holes, he set himself up nicely to capitalize on a double bogey from Molinari, but still left him tied for first with 2 other players. But 3 birdies in the next 6 holes took him further and further from the grips of Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, and Xander Schauffele, even bogeying the 18th. And somehow, he did it. He beat the odds. He silenced his haters, and he proved the doubters wrong. 22 years after his first victory, 22 years of scandals, surgeries, injuries, and more scandals, he still had it in him for one more. A magical final moment, throwing his arms in the air, the crowd chanting his name, and a warm embrace with his son who idolized his father. He said in a post-round interview, "I was just trying to plod my way around all day, and then all of a sudden, I had the lead. When I tapped in the final putt, I don't know what I did. I know I screamed. To have my kids here, it's come full circle. My dad was here in 1997, and now I'm the dad with 2 kids. It would have been a beautiful way to end his career, but he still had fire for competition. He still wanted more. Until his body gave way entirely, he would continue to play. Still recovering from his existing surgeries and injuries, he crashed his car again. This time, not just getting away with a scratch. Open fractures to both upper and lower portions of his tibia and fibula in his right leg, damage to his ankle bones, and trauma to the muscle. Was this the nail in the coffin that would finally see Tiger walk away from the sport? There's surely no way he could compete anymore. His body was broken and had been for a long time. He was lucky he survived, let alone touch a golf course again. But we both know what happened next. He returned once more for the 2022 Masters, once again at Augusta. Surely not, right? He made the cut and finished in 47th place, 23 behind Scotty Scheffler, but the fact he recovered and was still playing was an absolute miracle. It appears as of late that Tiger has taken more of a backseat to professional golf, taking more time to create content on various YouTube channels, helping golfers of all levels with his tips that helped him become one of the world's greatest golfers. He now has Charlie, who he competes with in tournaments, who is turning out to be a hell of a golfer, and his daughter, who caddied for them both. Imagine seeing Tiger smiling like that 15 years ago. It would simply never happen. Regardless of his scandals, he has left a legacy, saying that what he achieved will most likely never be replicated. A golf genius, an inspiration, who of course had his flaws, but that was the story of Tiger Woods. But can you imagine being the best player never to win a major? Well, that was Phil Mickelson 12 years after turning pro. But everything changed at the 2004 Masters. For all his brilliance, his career had been riddled with controversies, highs and lows, and of course, being overshadowed by one of the greatest golfers to have ever lived. So, how good was prime Phil Mickelson actually? Well, to start us off, his swing is one of the most recognisable in golf history, but it's memorable not just for its beauty, it's the fact that it's left-handed. What makes this even more unusual is how Mickelson became a lefty in the first place, being that he was right-handed. As a child, he watched his father swing a golf club in their backyard. The catch? His dad was right-handed, so Phil mirrored him by standing on the opposite side of the ball. The result? A natural left-handed stroke that would become his trademark. Growing up in San Diego, California, Mickelson was surrounded by golf from a young age. His father, Phil Sr., wasn't just a weekend golfer. He was an aviator who built a makeshift driving range in their backyard. Under his watch, young Phil started swinging clubs practically before he could walk. By age 3, he was hitting balls with startling precision for a kid who could still count his age on one hand. But there was a challenge looming on the horizon. The world of golf didn't exactly cater to left-handed players. From equipment to instruction manuals. This was over 40 years ago, after all. Manufacturers hadn't started stocking golf clubs like they do now for left-handed players. But that didn't stop him. From his early teens, Mickelson became a local sensation, grinding away at his game with a mix of technical practice and sheer creativity. He was the kind of player who would picture wild shots in his mind just to see if he could pull them off, something that never changed as he got older. His early career was filled with moments that hinted at the golfer he would become. As a high schooler, he'd regularly shoot in the 60s, walking the course with a swagger that came more from confidence than ego. By the time Mickelson reached college, he wasn't just good, he was historically good. At Arizona State University, he turned the golf world on its head, winning 16 collegiate events. And he didn't just beat opponents, he demolished them. 3 individual NCAA championships later, and he was heralded as one of the greatest college golfers to ever pick up a club. And if that wasn't enough, his US amateur title in 1990 solidified his reputation as a generational talent. It wasn't just his wins though, it was the way he did it. He played with an adventurous, borderline reckless style that made him stand out. He wasn't afraid to risk it all for a sensational shot. But perhaps the moment when the world truly took notice was in 1991, at the Northern Telecom Open. Still an amateur, Mickelson shocked everyone by taking down a field of seasoned professionals. At the time, this was almost unheard of. The PGA Tour had long been dominated by experienced players. Amateurs were supposed to grind away at small tournaments before seeing that kind of success. Yet, there he was, grinning with a trophy in his hands, as if winning on the biggest stage was just another stop on the journey. By the time he turned pro in 1992, expectations were sky high. How could they not be after all? Mickelson was coming off of one of the most dominant amateur careers in history, and he had the charisma to match his talent. There was talk of records being broken, of majors piling up, and of Mickelson stepping into the role of the sport's next big thing. But looming over all of this was an unspoken reality. Professional golf was about to change, and Mickelson would be caught in its crossfire. Any other generation, and Phil would have won everything over and over again. But what nobody could have predicted was the arrival of another prodigy who would redefine the sport entirely. That prodigy, of course, was Tiger Woods, a golfer with a relentlessness and precision that left little room for anyone else to shine. For Mickelson, this would turn out to be both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, he had the opportunity to play in arguably the most competitive era in golf history, sharing a stage with someone who pushed him to elevate his own game and forced him not to settle for the level that he had been playing at before. On the other hand, it meant Mickelson's achievements, no matter how remarkable, were often overshadowed. At this point, everything was in place. Mickelson had the talent, the flair, and the momentum to make his mark as a pro, but meeting expectations would prove far harder than expected. He now had to share the stage that he thought he was going to have to himself. When Woods burst onto the PGA Tour in 1996, the game of golf entered a new chapter, one dominated by a single name. The late 1990s and early 2000s, Tiger wasn't just winning tournaments, he was reshaping what dominance in golf looked like. 7 majors in a span of 11 appearances, from the 1999 PGA Championship to the 2002 US Open, made it clear that Woods was operating on a completely different level and standing in the spotlight. But he wasn't just an afterthought either. His rise to prominence had its own intrigue. He was a natural talent with wins early in his PGA career that suggested that he could still become one of golf's all-time greats. But winning regular tournaments wasn't enough. Golf's elite are defined by one thing: majors. And while Woods seemed to collect them all for fun, Mickelson was stuck with the uncomfortable reputation as the best player never to win a major. Year after year, he flirted with major success, but was always left empty-handed. He watched as Woods transformed golf, not just with his victories, but with the way he intimidated the entire field. Phil would later admit the obvious. Competing against Pete Tiger was brutal. It sucked to have to play against him. It really did. You look at it and say, how am I going to beat this? The challenge wasn't just about Woods' skill, it was how their differences accentuated Mickelson's struggles. Phil was daring and unpredictable, always chasing spectacular shots. Fans loved his creativity, but it often came at a cost. Sometimes those bold plays worked, but sometimes they didn't, leaving him scrambling to simply keep pace. Woods, on the other hand, played with machine-like precision. His game plan was simpler. Don't take unnecessary risks, stay steady, and make others crack under pressure. These contrasting styles often made their rivalry fascinating. Phil's lively approach to the game was wildly popular with fans, but it also led to questions about his discipline when it came to winning the tournaments that truly mattered. Even in head-to-head pairings, Mickelson didn't just roll over. In fact, their record against each other came out to an even 16 wins apiece, with 4 halved matches. And yet, Woods' dominance at the top often left no doubt about who cast the longest shadow. Major championships were the ultimate measuring stick, and through the early 2000s, Mickelson's tally remained frozen at 0. Woods' major streak continued to grow, adding to the feeling that Mickelson was always going to be the other guy of that era. But the frustration didn't seem to crush him. His longtime caddy, Bones Mackay, explained how Mickelson stayed resilient. He staggered to his feet and kept working the problem. And for Mickelson, that problem was clear. He needed to win a major, not just for himself, but to prove to the golf world that he could. One of the most compelling moments in their rivalry came during the 2001 Masters. The two of them were in contention on Sunday, both pushing for the iconic green jacket. Woods, of course, emerged victorious, completing what would later be called the Tiger Slam, holding all 4 major titles at once. Phil, while incredibly close that week, couldn't quite get it over the finish line. Despite the disappointment, it was the kind of moment that showed how thrilling golf could be when the two were in the mix at the same time. But finally, in the 2004 Augusta National, Mickelson broke through. Standing over an 18-foot birdie putt on the final hole, everything seemed to hang in the balance. This wasn't just a chance to win any tournament. This was Phil Mickelson's chance to shed that exhausting label, to prove his victory could stand alongside the best in the Tiger Woods era. And when the ball dropped in the cup, so did years of frustration. His jubilant leap into the air, arms raised, wasn't just a celebration. It was a relief, a statement that he belonged. His 2004 Masters win wasn't just about finally capturing a major, it validated the sense that Mickelson's style of play could compete at the highest level. Even with Woods still dominating the sport, Mickelson had carved out his moment. The win seemed to spark something in him. He went on to collect 4 more major championships, including 3 Masters titles that solidified his legacy at Augusta. And critically, he achieved all of this during Woods' heyday, not in some later stretch when his dominance had faded. He himself acknowledged how difficult it was to compete with an all-time great in his prime. Speaking about Woods' reign, Mickelson remarked, "It was the most remarkable golf in the history of the game, and I think unrepeatable. I think it was that good." If anything, Mickelson's success looks even more impressive through that lens. Winning 5 majors, despite competing alongside someone redefining what greatness in golf looked like. But even after tasting success, his journey was far from smooth. Those major wins told only part of the story, because his career would continue to be an unpredictable mix of triumph, disappointment, and eventually controversy. How does a player win 6 major championships, including one of the most historic victories in golf's history, and still leave fans wondering what could have been? That's the paradox of Phil Mickelson's career, a mixture of dazzling triumphs and frustrating near misses, with the US Open serving as one of the most haunting pieces of the puzzle. His first win in 2004 was unforgettable. He returned to Augusta as a champion in 2006 and 2010, navigating its challenges with a mix of daring shots and a command over the greens that seemed second nature. But beyond the Masters, Mickelson's victories at the PGA Championship and Open Championship cemented his place in the game's upper echelon. His 2005 PGA Championship win showcased his clutch play when it mattered most. It came down to the final hole, and Mickelson calmly delivered a birdie that sealed his first Wanamaker trophy. But arguably his most jaw-dropping major performance came well into the later years of his career. In 2021, at nearly 51 years old, Mickelson shocked the golf world by winning the PGA Championship at Kauai Island. With that win, he became the oldest major champion in golf history, defying both Father Time and the odds on a notoriously brutal course. It was a masterclass in precision, resilience, and experience. A career-defining triumph in an era when most players his age had already retired from serious contention. Yet, even with those 6 majors, one tournament casts an unavoidable shadow: the US Open. It's not just that Mickelson hasn't won it, it's how agonizingly close he came. 6 times he's finished second at the event, and each runner-up had its own sting. At the 2006 US Open at Winged Foot, the stage was set for Mickelson to win his 3rd consecutive major and finally capture the elusive US Open title. All he needed was a par on the 18th hole. Instead, his aggressive mindset, the same one that helped him win countless tournaments, backfired. He pulled out his driver off the tee, a risky decision under the circumstances, and sent the ball into rough so deep that it may have belonged on a completely different course. From there, it only got worse. His second shot hit a tree, and ultimately a double bogey handed the title to Jeff Ogilvy. Mickelson summed it up bluntly afterwards: "I'm such an idiot." That moment, as brutal as it was, encapsulated the duality of Phil's playing style. His aggressive, crowd-thrilling approach to golf wasn't just a strategy, it was a part of who he was as a competitor. His other US Open close calls played out like chapters in a tragic novel. In 1999 at Pinehurst, he lost by a single stroke to Payne Stewart, who famously comforted Mickelson on the final green despite winning the championship himself. Then came heartbreaks at Shinnecock Hills in 2004, Bethpage Black in 2002 and 2009, and Merion in 2013. Each time, Mickelson was in position to win, and each time, something, whether it was a poor shot, a bold decision, or a red-hot opponent, kept him from closing the deal. The record alone of 6 US Open runner-ups is one that nobody else wants to match. The phrase US Open curse followed him wherever he went, becoming one of the enduring storylines of his career. And yet, through it all, he never shied away from the heartbreaks or made excuses. If anything, he embraced them as part of his journey. "It motivates me to keep working hard," he said, reflecting on his inability to win the tournament. Those near misses didn't diminish his accomplishments, they simply added complexity to a legacy already filled with extremes. By the time Phil secured his 6th major at Kauai Island, the narrative had shifted. That win didn't erase the sting of his US Open losses, but it proved something more significant. His career was so much bigger than his frustrations. His perseverance, his daring style, and his ability to deliver brilliance when it mattered most had already secured his place among golf's all-time greats. But his career wasn't just defined by his play, it was also shaped by controversy. Phil Mickelson has always been one of the most celebrated figures in golf, but also one of the most polarizing. Like Marmite, you either love him or you hate him. Over the years, he's faced blame, backlash, and bad press, proving that even the biggest fan favourites aren't immune to controversy. One of the most notable scandals began in 2014 when he found himself entangled in an insider trading investigation. The situation centered around stock tips that Mickelson had allegedly received from a well-connected gambler named Billy Walters. According to reports, Walters gave Mickelson a hot tip on shares of Dean Foods, which Mickelson bought just days before the company's stock price surged. He reportedly turned a profit of nearly $1 million from the trade, but the fallout would prove costly in more ways than one. While he avoided criminal charges by cooperating with investigators, federal authorities required him to pay back the money along with interest. The controversy immediately sparked headlines, drawing attention to his off-course dealings in a way that was rare for a top-tier golfer. The impact on his reputation was noticeable, even if Mickelson managed to stay out of direct legal consequences. Fans and analysts were left questioning whether a player so celebrated on the course could have allowed himself to get so close to something as messy as insider trading. Mickelson, for his part, didn't shy away from accepting at least some responsibility, calling it a matter I've taken very seriously and learned from. Still, the spectacle left an undeniable blot on his once squeaky clean image. But if the insider trading controversy stirred public intrigue, Mickelson's involvement with Saudi-backed Live Golf in 2022 took it to a completely different level. The Live Golf project, a rival league to the PGA Tour, funded by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, promised enormous sums of money to attract top players. Mickelson, already one of the wealthiest figures in golf, stunned the sports world when he became one of its most high-profile supporters. His involvement wasn't entirely surprising. Mickelson has always been outspoken about players earning more in professional golf, but the way it unfolded was anything but smooth. He didn't just align himself with Live Golf. He did so while openly criticizing the PGA Tour, calling it manipulative and accusing it of hoarding revenue that should have gone to the players. These comments alone might have been enough to stir controversy, but things became far more explosive when an interview with author Alan Shipnuck revealed Mickelson's own misgivings about his partnership with Liv. In the piece, he referred to the Saudis as scary motherfuckers due to their human rights record, even acknowledging the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Still, Mickelson justified his involvement, framing it as an opportunity to create leverage against the PGA Tour, saying, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape how the PGA Tour operates." The fallout from these remarks was immediate and intense. He faced widespread criticism for working with the Saudi regime, accused by many of prioritizing personal profit over ethics. Several of his longtime sponsors, including KPMG and Workday, cut ties with him. He went dark for months, skipping tournaments and stepping out of the public eye entirely. When he eventually returned, he tried to clarify his position, stating that his intention was to grow the game of golf globally and provide more opportunities for players. "I've made mistakes and I'm sorry for that, but I don't regret the opportunities this league is creating," Mickelson said during a press conference. So how does Mickelson himself view his career and his legacy? Is it defined by his 6 majors, or is there something bigger at play? For starters, his longevity in golf is almost unmatched. He spent over 25 consecutive years within the top 50 of the official world golf ranking, and more than 700 of those weeks were spent in the top 10. And his impact didn't stop with the spotlight. In 2004, he and his wife Amy founded the Phil and Amy Mickelson Foundation, aimed at supporting youth and family initiatives. While he rarely made a public spectacle of his charitable contributions, the foundation became an outlet for making a difference off the course. Financially, his career has been nothing short of staggering, with estimated career earnings near $1 billion. He stands as one of the highest paid athletes in any sport. While tournament winnings made up a sizable portion, endorsements were where Mickelson really secured his fortune. In 2011, he was the second highest paid athlete in the United States, raking in over $62 million, including $53 million in endorsements. Companies like Rolex, ExxonMobil, and Maison Plus Main partnered with Mickelson at the height of his fame, recognizing his marketability both as a golfer and a larger-than-life personality. The numbers highlight his status as more than just an elite player. He became a brand, symbol of both golf's tradition and appeal to a new generation of fans. Looking back, his influence on golf mirrors his influence on fans. Deep, complex, and unforgettable. So how good was Prime Phil Mickelson really? Prime Phil wasn't just a golfer, he was an artist, turning tournaments into theatres of risk and reward, with 45 PGA Tour wins and 6 major championships. His career stands among the greats, yet it's the method behind the madness that defines him. Fans connected with his boldness, the perfect flop shots, the absurd angles, the moments where brilliance teetered on disaster. And while Mickelson hopes his involvement with Live Golf becomes a defining piece of his legacy, his journey reminds us greatness isn't just about victory, but the unforgettable ride. Tiger Woods may have owned the era, but Mickelson gave it its soul. These videos take a long time to make, so consider subscribing and checking out one of these videos as well.